This is WCM's Park Update, a weekly show covering the outdoor hospitality industry, hosted by Ben Quiggle and Mike Gast. During each episode, you'll hear from special guests and campground experts on topics that will help your park flourish. WCM's Park Update is a production of Woodall's Campground Magazine.
Hi, I'm Ben Quiggle, editor of Woodall's Campground Magazine, and welcome to another edition of WCM's Park Update. Of course, my esteemed colleague Mike Gast is here, former Vice President of Communications for Campgrounds of America. And our show today is sponsored by Book Outdoors. Thank you, Book Outdoors, for sponsoring the show. Our guest is somebody who a lot of people probably recognize if they've gone to conferences. Tim Rout from AccessParks, and he's the founder of AccessParks, which does Wi-Fi, broadband systems. I guess, Tim, you could probably explain a little bit better about what you do for RV parks and campgrounds.
Yeah, thanks, Ben, and thanks for having me on. So, for over 17 years, our team has specialized in bringing broadband out to remote rural locations where it didn't previously exist, and always fiber connected and guaranteeing minimum speeds and so on. So that's what we do.
Yeah, and I think, one of the reasons I wanted to bring you on the show is because, you guys had some exciting news last week, I think it was last week, where you guys announced you had raised private equity with MC Partners, and you're kind of transitioning, I guess. You have a new CEO, Alan Rosenberg, coming on, and then you're still going to be part of the management team working along with Alan. But that's pretty exciting, I guess, as you guys grow.
It is exciting. The entire team is super excited. It's been a fun 4 weeks post funding, of course. We were growing so fast over the last 6 years. Doubling the company size every year, basically, and installing thousands of pads every month. And we just had so many parks in the backlog and so much demand out there, and so much more we wanted to do on the technology side and R&D and supporting the customers and so on that we decided to take on a very large funding from MC Partners. They've got extensive experience in the telecom industry. They work with a lot of other companies that are similarly focused. And so it's been really exciting to have all the resources at our disposal and bring in an experienced CEO in Alan Rosenberg. He comes from decades of telecom and the big telcos, the tier one telcos, sort of the AT&Ts and Windstreams of the world. And so that allows me to focus exclusively on what I enjoy most, which is bringing solutions out to the market and working with customers to solve their problems on the connectivity side.
So, Tim, what's your staffing level look like? And how much has it grown, and where's it going to go now with this new funding?
Yeah, good question, Mike. I mean, we never had any trouble attracting talent. People love our mission; they love what we do, and so we were very lucky in terms of being able to hire great people. But what this is really going to allow us to do is hire in advance of revenue. So really, no longer growing as organically as we were. We'll really be able to hit the ground running with a lot of very senior folks coming in at executive and mid-levels, and a lot of really amazing engineers that we've got in the hopper that we're excited to bring on as well. And so just really, scaling up the team in the next 6 months really dramatically across the country. So we've got open requisitions for positions across the board. So by the end of the year, we should be double or triple where we are today.
So we've all been around long enough to remember the days when good Wi-Fi meant scratch off cards and by the hour and by the drink and a lot of other technologies picking away at it. Has it become a standard amenity now? It's just an expectation of the campers on the parks, and it just has to be good, or it's a huge negative?
Well, you're exactly right, Mike, and the whole demographics of the industry really changed in the last 6 years. It was already happening before COVID, but COVID really sort of accelerated this process. But when we really focused exclusively on outdoor hospitality, starting about 6 years ago, RV parks, national parks, state parks, mobile home communities, In an RV park, it was in some cases sufficient to be able to load a web page or check your email. And what happened over the last 6 years is that the expectations of the customer in this space have grown exponentially. They now expect the same or better performance as what they get at home or at work. And so the state of the industry when we started many years ago, was really quite poor. Nobody was really taking Wi-Fi seriously. It was sort of an amenity, an add-on. If you had it, it was a bonus. If you didn't, nobody cared. Hey, people are just here to disconnect anyway, right? And so we saw a lot of that, and we heard a lot of that. And we kind of saw where the industry was going many years ago, and said this is not going to last. People are genuinely unhappy. They're becoming increasingly so. And when I was traveling the country with my wife in our Airstream, before we had kids, by the way, for long periods of time, we couldn't stay in any of these parks. I couldn't work. We couldn't even get email. We couldn't get video. You couldn't do voice calling. You certainly couldn't work remotely from your rig. And so that was really the genesis of AccessParks, and that's in the name, access. We wanted to be able to provide access to people to the outdoors, and to do that, they need to be able to stay connected. And so, over the last several years, timing is everything, and we were perfectly positioned with our product and our service, delivering really high speeds over fiber and wireless Wi-Fi and so on, and 5G. And then during COVID, it just accelerated exponentially. And now people were working from their rig, and their kids were doing distance learning. And all of those providers, previously who had gotten by with sort of dial-up speeds and a DSL modem in the lobby kind of thing, a lot of parks really got caught flat-footed. And so we were there to sort of solve that problem for them. And the rest is history. We started working with all the big outdoor hospitality operators out there, and solving that problem across the country for their entire portfolio, and providing predictable quality. And that was what was missing in the market. And it's what the guests demanded. And so we were just there to solve that.
Are there still places you just can't get to? Still can't go?
Absolutely not, Mike. That's our claim to fame, is that we're able to serve any park in the country with fiber speeds within about 90 to 120 days. We'll make it work for any park.
Wow. I guess when we look at the market right now, we're seeing a lot of investment, a lot of new developments coming in. Are the new developments recognizing the Wi-Fi, and are they looking for top-notch Wi-Fi right out of the gate, I guess?
Yeah, that's a great point, Ben, is that, sometimes we struggle, trying to convince sort of a smaller mom and pop RV park, of the need for Wi-Fi. They view it as an expense, not as a return on investment. And it's our job to try to convince them otherwise, that this is a massive return on investment. It's a profit center for the park, the same as any other profit center, et cetera. But you're right. When we work with many of the large developers out there, of which there seem to be many, more every day, building these large parks and expanding, their reach across the country, we're their first call. They're coming to us saying, we know that broadband is the fourth utility. It's as important or more important as water, sewer, and electric. Let's start talking AccessParks early. Before as soon as we've got architectural drawings for the park, let's start planning out a proper broadband Wi-Fi system. And so it's been really gratifying to see that development in the industry, as the sophisticated developers are viewing broadband as critical to what they do from day one, rather than just an afterthought, where they call us, after the park is already done and the trenches are closed up, and they say, oh, by the way, can you put Wi-Fi in this park? It makes it more difficult, but we've been getting involved in the process very, very early with a lot of the big operators and a lot of the big developers.
Without going too technical, because I'm not a tech nerd, so I don't know a lot of the terminology, but without going too technical, what's involved in putting a system into a park? What do you guys do that maybe separates you from maybe other providers, or, what should go into a really good solid system at a park?
Yeah. So Ben, I guess in one phrase, it would be, a Swiss Army knife approach. They're unlike many other environments for connectivity and for internet service for ISPs, for MDUs, for example, apartment complexes, hotels, very easy environments, right? Very predictable. RV parks are probably the most challenging wireless environment that anybody will try to solve for. And you have to have the best wireless engineers, the RF engineers in the business to be able to design for that, because you have unique terrain for every park. You have unique trees. Even the types of trees are unique, and they all block signal in different ways. You've got people inside an RV, a big metal box, which in our business is considered a Faraday cage. It blocks all the wireless signals. And being able to deliver a guaranteed minimum Wi-Fi speed inside those boxes just requires a real breadth of technologies and a lot of lessons learned. We had a lot of technologies in the beginning that just didn't work. And it took years to perfect a lot of that. But we always want to stay on the cutting edge. We're always looking at the latest and greatest 5G systems that are coming out, the latest technologies on wireless, licensed spectrum, unlicensed spectrum. But there's no one silver bullet. And I think that's been our claim to fame for 17 years, even when we were, back in the day when we were doing all the U.S. military bases, all the big national parks. You've really got to have every technology at your disposal, and you've got to be on the cutting edge of all of that. And that's how you drive costs down, and therefore prices for the consumer, for the park owner, drive performance up, and drive revenue for the park, drive those speeds up further and further, drive the costs down. It's a constant process. Every month we're evaluating new systems, new processes, new technologies. So a lot of the folks out there in the past, they had sort of one-hit wonders. They maybe had one technology out there. It was all fiber, let's say, or it was all wireless. There really is no answer for every park. They're all sort of unique snowflakes, if you will. They all require some significant customization, and therefore the best engineers in the business and really enterprise grade systems. That was the other thing that we saw when we entered the market. Lots of small business grade equipment out there, lots of cheap systems that just didn't perform. And we just didn't believe in that. We wanted to see an enterprise grade system out there that really performed. And
yet you with all those challenges, you're pretty much guaranteeing on your website that bookings will increase 10 to 20%. Obviously, you've got a track record that will stand behind that.
Yeah, we've got the data that shows that anywhere from 10 to 20% increase in bookings. And really, this was the vision of the company, Mike, when I started it, was, there was no transparency in the industry. If you were booking at an RV park, you had no idea whether you were going to be able to load a web page or not. And you had to try. You had to show up. You had to open up your laptop or your smart TV and see how it worked. And it didn't work. In most cases, 90+% of the parks, it just didn't work, especially in the peak evening hours, 6 to 10 p.m. And what do you do then? You've got to pick up everything and move to another park. And so, that was the vision of AccessParks, was providing that guarantee, almost like the Starbucks of Wi-Fi. If you see our logo at a park, you'll know you're going to get that guaranteed minimum speed over the Wi-Fi for every wireless device. And it used to be 25 megabit per second download, which is the FCC definition of broadband, but we recently doubled that to 50 down. And most folks are getting more like 100, 150 meg per second download speeds on our Wi-Fi if you've got a later generation device. So having that transparency and that predictability, to me personally, was very important, because when I travel around, if I'm going to try to work from the road, I've got to have that guarantee. I've got to see the graphs. I want to go to your website of the RV park and see the graphs and see that last night at 8 or 9 p.m. you were still delivering 50, 100, 150 megabit per second speed. And then I know I can Zoom with work. I can do teleconferencing. I can use Dropbox in the evenings. During the day I'm out exploring, but in the evenings I've got to catch up. And that was one of the big misconceptions in the industry, that people want to go disconnect. They do want to disconnect, but only for about 22 hours out of the day. If they can connect in the evening for a couple of hours and get caught up with work, and their kids can do some video on Netflix while they go outside and have a glass of wine or a beer. That's absolutely critical. It's those 2 or 3 hours in the evening where people really need that performance on the Wi-Fi, and that's what we designed for, is that peak time.
So, are you guys the ones that are out there actually digging the trenches and laying the fiber optic?
Yeah, we do everything soup to nuts, Mike. So, wow. End-to-end managed services. So, that's the key really in this industry, is a lot of folks had tried to piece this together. They go to the local ISP for the internet connection. Then they go to some other local guy who knows something about Best Buy routers and so on. And they're piecing it all together. And what ended up happening in the industry was that there was so much finger pointing, and the poor park owner had no idea why the system didn't work. The ISP is pointing to the wireless system. The Wi-Fi guy is pointing to the ISP. The big strategy with AccessParks was to be an end-to-end managed service provider so that we have total control over the system. We manage the fiber connection, the construction of that fiber to every park, or microwave to the park from a fiber connection if necessary. The Wi-Fi connections in the park, the 24-hour customer support, the truck rolls anywhere in the country for maintenance when something breaks. There's one call. If the park owner has an issue or the guest has an issue, there's one call and one throat to choke, so to speak.
Yeah. We'll take a break on that. One throat to choke. I've never heard that saying, but that's an interesting
or one hand to shake. One hand to shake,
Okay.
as our sales managers like to say. One hand.
We'll take a break, recognize our sponsor, Book Outdoors, and we'll be back in a minute with more with Tim Rout.
Today's show is sponsored by Book Outdoors. If you want increased visibility and higher occupancy, your campground needs to be listed where today's guests are searching and booking. Book Outdoors is the most sought-after destination for booking outdoor accommodations. Listing your property on Book Outdoors is free and easy, and Book Outdoors seamlessly integrates with several popular reservation systems. Register now and get a $25 gift card when your listing is published, plus another $100 to celebrate your first booking. Visit partners.bookoutdoors.com for more information and to get started.
Hi, welcome back to WCM's Park Update, and we are talking with Tim Rout from AccessParks. And Tim, I know I've heard you talk quite a bit at various conferences about the challenging elements you guys can work in. I know when I talk to a lot of park owners, they're like, "Oh, we're too far out. We've tried a bunch of different options." But you've explained to me a little bit about how you can manage to get signals even into mountainous areas. I guess that's pretty amazing from my perspective. I guess how do you manage to do that without laying a bunch of wire, I guess?
Yeah, that's a question we get quite often, Ben. I guess the best example would be the national parks. It's very gratifying to go solve the connectivity issues for the biggest national parks out there, like Grand Canyon and Yellowstone and Death Valley and Glacier National Park. Some of my favorite places, by the way, but where you couldn't even load a web page on cellular or Wi-Fi in those locations before we came along. What we do in those parks is we're serving millions of visitors to those locations, those lodges and campgrounds and so on, from fiber connections that are in some cases 60 or 80 or 90 miles away outside the park. And so that's really another quiver in our arsenal, I guess you would say, is the ability to find the fiber circuits wherever they are and be able to build a fixed wireless microwave shot out to any small park in the country and large ones like national parks, of course. But, the key here is being able to do that for a small park and being able to do it economically. There are plenty of folks out there who know about microwave, but they're going to charge an arm and a leg. But being able to find solutions for, let's say, a 100 pad park in the middle of, the prairie of Indiana, where the nearest fiber is 60 or 70 miles away, and to be able to do that economically and only add a few $100s a month to the bill, that has been, another one of our sort of secret sauces, if you will, is the ability to serve that fiber speed to a park, even when there's really no fiber nearby. Typically, fiber has to be within a few miles of a park to make it economical to construct it out. In a certain fraction of our cases, we do use microwave to bring that gigabit speed to the park.
So, Tim, you advertise 30 to 90 days for an install. Is that going to be shortened up now with the new funding? And is it too late for somebody that wants to get going this spring and be active to sign up?
Yeah, no, it's never too late. We can always work something out, but the fiber construction is something that we don't have a lot of control over. We work with all the big fiber providers out there, the big telcos like Lumen, AT&T, Verizon, and so on. So they're the ones who are actually constructing that fiber to the park. If we're not doing a microwave shot. But that process for them does involve permitting and all the regular stuff with construction. It can take anywhere from 60 to 120 days. And so that's typically what we try to set expectations at from the very beginning. So it's one reason we've been very, very busy this month in January, because this is sort of getting to the last stage where you can still order circuits and get them installed before the summer season. If it does end up taking the ISP 4 months to install it, and you've got to be launched by May, do the math.
Mm.
So this is typically one of our busier times of the year because everybody's trying to get those fiber circuits ordered. Our portion is very minimal, right? We're on site for a few weeks, maybe at most, installing the equipment once the fiber circuit is live and we can do testing on it. So that the bottleneck really isn't AccessParks. But to your point, Mike, now that we've got funding and we're hiring like crazy, we'll have teams nationwide. We already have regional contractors nationwide, but we'll have our own people in the densest areas of the country. So Florida, Texas, many other areas will have full-time employees doing construction and support and so on. So yes, that the funding will help in the sense of implementing the product, once the fiber is in. But we will always have that bottleneck with the fiber ISPs.
So I'm old enough to remember that the days when part of my job was convincing campground owners to put a PC on their front desk. So it's always been a struggle. Do you find now that the people you deal with are pretty up on what's going to be required of them on the front desk and just to operate your system locally?
Yeah, so the main thing about our service is that we're handling everything from end to end, including the guest support. And so one of the biggest challenges we have in many cases is trying to convince the front desk to refer all those guests to us. Mm-hmm. So we provide all the marketing materials, the front desk cards. If you have an issue with your Roku device at 2 a.m, call this 888 number to AccessParks, and they'll help you within a minute or so, or send an email and create a ticket. Trying to convince the front desk staff to take a more hands-off approach sometimes is our biggest challenge. A lot of the time they try to engage with the guests, they try to answer their questions on the technical side, and obviously we require the direct interaction with the guests to be able to solve any connection issues they might be having. So no, I mean the front desk in an ideal scenario is completely out of the picture. If somebody comes to them with a Wi-Fi issue, they should be just handing that guest our card and saying, here, call AccessParks, and they'll solve that for you.
Yeah. I guess what's the future hold for Wi-Fi? I guess what's coming down the pipeline that owners might need to be thinking about, 5-10 years down the road, I guess.
Yeah, so Wi-Fi is not going away. I think that's the first thing to really emphasize. I've been in this industry long enough to have seen 3G and 4G and now 5G and now 6G is going to be coming out eventually. Wi-Fi will always have 10 times the capacity of cellular, and we do hear quite often from some park owners, 5G is going to solve the problem. Well, I heard that about 4G. We heard that about 3G. There just isn't enough licensed spectrum in this country to keep up with the demand for bandwidth. So I think the most important thing to really say on this is that Wi-Fi will always be here. And every generation of Wi-Fi will always be about 10 times faster and have 10 times the capacity of cellular. Cellular is really more of a mobility technology. So it's great for when you're in the car and you're out roaming around. But 80% of the data traffic in this country travels over Wi-Fi. And it's at home and at work where people are using that Wi-Fi signal. So, the cellular spectrum is just never going to catch up to where people's demand is, especially in RV parks, which is basically a residential environment. People are watching tons of 4K and 8K video. And that does require 25 to 50 megabit per second of speed. And it requires unlimited data, no data caps. That's why the cellular companies have data caps, because they don't have enough spectrum to be able to manage all of this. They're trying to actually dissuade people from using the system. We encourage people to use our system. The cellular companies are trying to find ways to dissuade people from using data because they just don't have the capacity to do it. So Wi-Fi is not going anywhere. We're installing Wi-Fi 6 today. There could be Wi-Fi 7 in the next 5 years or so. It'll take a while for everybody's client devices to start catching up and start supporting that standard. And we do refreshes of the Wi-Fi radios every once in a while just to make sure we're keeping up with the standards. But yeah, Wi-Fi is here to stay.
Yeah, I guess and when we had a conversation a few weeks ago, you had mentioned one of your dreams too is to kind of start I guess a membership of some kind. I don't know how much you want to say about that, but I know you guys were working on something like that for like traveling RVers.
Well, yeah, good point, Ben. To my point I made a moment ago, the cellular carriers are very excited about what we're doing. We're bringing really high-speed connectivity, fiber-fed connectivity out to the most remote locations in the country where they don't have any big towers. They don't have any fiber-fed systems, fiber-fed towers. And they've been working with us over the last several years, roaming their customers onto our Wi-Fi. So when somebody comes into our Wi-Fi network, automatically and seamlessly, they just roam onto the Wi-Fi where they're not using the cellular tower anymore. And that's what the cellular companies want. They don't want you on their big macro tower watching Netflix. They want you on our Wi-Fi system. So we've been working really hand in glove with the big cell carriers out there, like AT&T and Verizon and Comcast and so on, to roam people onto our Wi-Fi system whenever they're in range. So as part of that initiative, later this year, we're expecting to roll out a nationwide connectivity plan. So, for something like $35 or $40 a month, you'll be able to sign up for nationwide connectivity in RV parks. And if you're inside one of our parks, you'll get unlimited data and very high speeds on the Wi-Fi. If you're not in one of our parks, you'll be able to use a cellular carrier, their network in those locations, and it'll sort of roam seamlessly. So you'll have one service that'll cover you across all locations, all RV parks around the country. So we're pretty excited about rolling that out with some of the big cellular carriers.
So do you have a ballpark cost for your typical campground? I know that what's a typical campground, but what's it going to cost in order to get started here?
Well, Mike, I can tell you it's probably more than many of our competitors. But the important thing about what we do is we create a sustainable business. Everything that goes into providing 24-hour support and truck rolls and the best equipment, that comes at a cost. And we try to keep that cost as low as possible. We don't mark up any of the installation of our systems, for example, just for that reason. But it is typically going to be more than what many of the parks are paying for, less service, sort of substandard service. You can go cheap if you want in this industry all day long, if you want a system that doesn't really work in the evening. But our system does work, and we guarantee it with the speeds. But to answer your question more specifically, I'll just answer it this way: all in with no upfront cash from the customer. For the installation or anything, you would typically have to raise your nightly rate by about $1.50.
Wow.
To cover our service. And so, it's not a big ask, and especially if you're marketing it properly to the guests, and we help with that. We have a whole marketing team that helps you market the broadband as a profit center and get people excited about it and convince them to book at your park versus another park. But that was another key is the sort of broadband as a service, where we roll everything into a very predictable, transparent price so that the park owner can determine exactly what their rate increase would have to be every night to be able to cover this type of a service.
Well, if they've got a history working with the scratch-off cards, that doesn't sound like too bad a deal.
Right. And parks are full. So there's, and people say, well, my park is full. Why would I need broadband? Why do I need to upgrade any of this? And our answer to that is, well, if you're full, you're not charging enough, first of all. And if you've got a broadband system in there, it gives you a lot more leverage to be able to increase your nightly rates. So we have some folks who, even though $1.50 would cover the cost for our service, they're raising their rates by $4 or $5. Now that they can brag about having that broadband system in the park, and people happily pay it. They love it. The demand has been there for years, and that's what a lot of the folks missed in this industry. The demand for a reliable broadband Wi-Fi system in the parks was there. People's expectations just got so low that they didn't even talk about it anymore. So we're meeting that demand.
Yeah, definitely. How would people get in touch with you? I know you have your website at accessparks.com. Is that the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Yeah, absolutely. People can send an email to sales@accessparks.com, and that goes to our sales team, and we can usually turn around a proposal for any park within a few days.
Okay. All right. Well, I think that's about all the time we have. So thank you, Tim, for coming on the show, and I imagine I'll be seeing you or some of your other people around at different conferences, maybe this spring and definitely next fall. So.
Absolutely. Yeah, we'll be out there in force. Looking forward to seeing you out there, Ben, and Mike, hopefully you too. And thanks for all the great questions.
Okay. All right. Well,
thanks,
thank you so much for coming on. Thanks everyone for watching, and we will be back again next week.
Thank you for listening to WCM's Park Update, a production of Woodall's Campground Magazine. Join us for a new show each Tuesday at 3 p.m. Eastern on Facebook, YouTube, and wherever you listen to podcasts. Follow us on Facebook and LinkedIn for daily news and updates, and subscribe to our news feed on our website at woodallscm.com. Show hosts are Ben Quiggle and Mike Gast. Executive producers Rick Kessler and Alex Burkett. Copyright 2022, G&G Media Group.